Welcome back. You're watching a Newslink, and the African National Congress has dominated the country's politics since the dawn of democracy in 1994. But results from the last three national elections show the party has been losing voter support. Since the 2016 local elections, the party has also been losing some of its strongholds. Factionalism, corruption and poor governance have been the party's undoing. Now that the party's leadership has been elected, how can the ANC's reign of voters' confidence ahead of the 2024 general elections? Well, to answer this question and more, I'm joined by Dr. David Mohale, who's the Director of Special Projects at the Durban University of Technology. Doc, many thanks for joining us this morning. And maybe let's start with that question. Your thoughts, or your initial thoughts rather, of the new top seven, now that it has become, and whether they are fit to take on the task of trying to win back the hearts of voters ahead of the 2024 elections.
Good morning to you. Good morning to the viewers of ENCA, and thank you for having me. Perhaps I should start by wishing everybody who observes this day a Merry Christmas. And back to your question, I would like to align myself with a number of observations that have been made by a number of commentators, that the fact that for the first time there are about 3 women in the top 7, I think that's a good indication as far as the agenda of the organization is concerned regarding its task of non-sexism. However, I'm always cautious to celebrate too early. This is just but one isolated incident. I do think that if the next conference can consolidate and further advance what we have seen emerging from this conference, I do think that we can begin to say that indeed the organization is finally about to break the class ceiling that so many have been speaking about as far as women leadership or women ascending to top leadership is concerned. Look, my view has always been that it's going to be very difficult for any leadership of the ANC going forward, given the fact that I do think that in hindsight, the ANC should have managed a number of policies differently, especially the economic question. And any other leadership that emerges from this conference in the next conference, for as long as the majority of the citizens continue to experience a number of challenges, be it economically with regard to the economic conditions are so difficult now. They are exacerbated by unending load shedding. It will be difficult for any sort of leadership. The fact that there's overall, when you look outside top 7, you've got a number of younger people coming on. One is hoping that the leadership, the entirety of the NEC, will be able to harness the youthful, innovative ideas together with those of the experienced older leaders that have been there. As to how they will manage that, it remains to be seen. But I do think that when one looks into the entire composition of the NEC, I think there's a reason for one to have some hope that there may be some new thinking as far as policy thinking is concerned, particularly regarding the economy. And of course, we've got to the top 7, the fact that we also have somebody like Marupini, who has come in, who comes from the recent cohort of the Youth League. I do think that says a lot about the Youth League playing its role in as far as preparing leadership for the ANC. It remains to be interesting as to how the presidency will function, given the reports that the president did not necessarily support his newly elected deputy. One is hoping that they'll be able to move beyond the conference, because in terms of internal ANC practice, there is nothing wrong with having different views. But I do think that as far as trust is concerned, it will be very important in terms of how the two of them manage their relationship behind the scenes and publicly.
Yeah, no, definitely. Are there any concerns, Doc, around the individuals themselves and whatever clouds that may be hanging over them, if any? I'm thinking here about Nomvula Mokonyane, and that the NPA may come for her next year, given that she has been implicated in the state capture report where the Bosasa matter is concerned. Is there any concerns from you that the work of the top 7 within the party and potentially broadly may be disturbed by a lot of the uncertainties that still remain, because ultimately David Mabuza has to step down as deputy president as well, so that Paul Mashatile can take on the new role. So there's a lot of settling that still needs to happen before they can hit the ground running, would you not think?
Look, I do think that the notion of step-aside principle, correct as it is from the moral point of view, it is always going to be at odds with the principle, the constitutional principle of presumption of innocence until proven otherwise. How the ANC finds balance between these two extremes, I do think that it's not going to be easy for them, because as things stand, we do know that, yes, in terms of the state capture report, Nomvola, Gwede, and others have been found to, the commission found that they might have the case to answer. We do know that for now, that the national chairperson has indicated his intention to take the report on review because he feels that some evidence was ignored by the commission. And it will be very difficult to tell. One is just hoping that there will be political will on the part of the NEC, firstly, to be seen to be demonstrating consistency in as far as how it handles this complex issue. Because so far there has been, there has been accusations and counter-accusations, with others feeling that when others are involved, those who are seen to be closer to the president, it would seem that the rule has not been applied equally to them. So I do think that for the unity and cohesion of the NEC in particular, because that this is the bedrock of the functionality of the organization. Whoever is affected, one would suppose that the organization will have the responsibility to ensure the consistency of the application of the principle, failing which we may continue to observe the deepening of the divisions that characterized the movement, not necessarily in the past 5 years, but if you like, from about 2003, when Thabo Mbeki and Jacob Zuma first had a feud publicly. And yes, indeed, in the last 5 years, it became very difficult, with the then SG almost immediately after the conference declaring the fact that it's a matter of 5 years, and then they plan to fight back. With regard to the question of Paul Mashatile coming in as the deputy president, look, as a person, I've not always subscribed to what is called the two centers of power. Of course, the problem, in my view, lies at the policy level, whether the state is implementing party policies or not. With the president being there and now improved, strengthened SGO with the addition of the second national deputy secretary, one would think that the ANC should be able to manage governance better from Little House instead of moving people in and around unnecessarily. But if they come to a decision that David Mabuza needs to make space for Paul Mashatile, as it has been the practice of the movement, that again should be handled with care. I do think that even though he's out in the structures formally, he should not feel like has been paid precisely because now there's a new deputy president. So for me, I think it's always about the skill in managing these sensitive issues. And indeed, in my view, I do think at times in the past, the organization did not skillfully manage some of the complex questions that they grappled with.
Yeah, and that's a very important thing. And while they're dealing with those complex questions around moving different executives about, this issue of factionalism is going to play a huge role in the 2024 elections. You do mention the differences between the president and the new deputy president of the movement. But within the party broadly, the factions have become clear as day. They are not under the carpet as they were before anymore. It's clear for everybody to witness what is happening within the movement. And this is going to really have implications on the elections should they not be able to create that unity and togetherness.
Certainly. But look, if you look at how the processes leading to this national conference, in terms of how branches, if you like, carried themselves openly disagreeing with some of the leaders from regions and provinces, And for the first time in the history of the ANC, or at least post 1994, if one may want to be as recent, it was for the first time that we saw a number of senior leaders campaigning for positions individually, not necessarily within the context of the slate, as it has always been the practice. And one would like to believe that there is a hope that it could be that this trend that we saw, it could be the beginning of doing away with factions, provided that there is capacity to maintain what we saw. And I would also want to believe that perhaps it's about the time that ANC revisits the question that Thabo Mbeki raised in the 2007 conference. In fact, he quoted one of the celebrated African leaders when he said, better, fewer, but better. You will recall that post-2007, there was this massive campaign, 1 million membership campaign. I suspect that that might have created a number of unintended consequences and problems for the organization, because then the focus was more on the quantity than quality. The reports indicate that the membership is currently sitting around 600,000, and I honestly feel that the organization should be comfortable with that. In fact, if you look at the number of votes the ANC has always received in local, provincial, and national government elections, the number of votes that it gets from elections have always far surpassed the membership of the organization. And one would, if I were to offer an advice, I would say I do think that it's about time that the shift really changes into quality than preoccupation with quantity. Yes, in terms of preparing for elections and other campaigns, you would want to be seen stronger in as far as numbers are concerned. But I think for me, what is more important is the extent to which the larger populace identifies with the policies of the organization than having 1 million members that are not necessarily adding value to the task of the movement. So one would suspect that for as long as you continue to have this lot of preoccupation with numbers, branches not functioning, only functioning towards conferences, and then after conferences, they literally die and wait for the next conference. Once you do have, we often say that nature does not allow value. Vacuum. Now, in an instance where branches or any structure of the organization does not have anything developmental to do, obviously factionalism and other negative tendencies will occupy the space. And that is why the movement is now seized with this unending internal fight. And it's sad because for the longest time, the organization has been inward looking in terms of focusing on the implementation of these policies. And I do think that if there could be, among the immediate things that one would suggest that they consider doing is that, amongst other things, the past 5 years, one was not very clear with regard to what were the constitutive elements of the so-called renewal agenda program. If coming out of this conference, the leadership could be able to identify, of course, linked to the resolutions, identify what would be the, perhaps, if you like, 5 top constitutive elements of the renewal agenda or campaign, and then they mobilize all the structures of the ANC around that. It could be that maybe you could begin to see a different ANC going into the 2024 elections.
Those are very interesting insights, and maybe we could see a different ANC. And I just want to pick your brain on that last point that you made there before we end our discussion, in that why has it always been so important for the ANC to get the mega numbers in terms of membership, given the fact that, as you've highlighted, the voter base has always been bigger than their member base, and so them not heeding the insights provided by former President Thabo Mbeki, why is it so important for them?
Look, the context at the time the organization focused on 1 million membership campaign, I think the intention was to synchronize that with 100 days of existence. Beyond that, one is not necessarily sure, but like I said, obviously politics is often the game of numbers, but one would assume that is important in as far as elective conferences are concerned. With regard to voting, I do think that it has got more to do with the ability of the organization to mobilize across the spectrum and ensure that people do actually believe, not only in the policies, but also the ability to implement. Because one of the weaknesses of the ANC today that are known within the party and outside is the old cliche that has been supported by a number of scholars as well, that we do have good policies, but implementation has been poor. I do not necessarily believe that ideas alone are enough. I don't think that what measures the effectiveness and the functionality of both the party and the state should be organizational capacity to implement and begin to see impact. That's why I'm saying with the younger members coming into the ANC, one is hoping that they'll begin to really bring in infuse new ideas into the thinking of the organization. There's nothing wrong with having larger numbers, by the way. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. But once you bring so many people into the organization, then you must have capacity to continually train, empower, and develop the membership, failing which you only have numbers that do not necessarily add value and make impact on the work that you should be doing as an organization.
Very, very interesting insights indeed, Doc. Thank you very much for taking some time on this Christmas Day to give us those insights. That is Director of Special Project at Durban University of Technology, Dr. David Mohale.